What's going on, everybody? Dudette with Dudette Gaming here. Today we're going to be doing another little info video on Predecessor. Now, what I want to do today is I want to focus on the different objectives of Predecessor. This is because I think there are a lot of new players in the game right now, and it's a really good idea for new players coming in to have a good heads up on how to play the game. Unfortunately, Predecessor right now in early access, I don't think has a very good way of introducing its own game to new players. So anybody who's jumping into it for the first time, or even playing a MOBA for the first time, is probably going to be pretty confused as to what's going on. So I want to give a handful of videos that are just helping people to figure it out. So what we're doing today, like I said, is we're going to be focusing on primary objectives, secondary objectives, and supporting objectives. Now I want to keep this video somewhat brief so that you're not wasting a lot of your time. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Primary objectives. Alright, this first one is super obvious. Winning the game. Well, how do you win the game? The way to win the game is by destroying the enemy core or forcing the enemy team to surrender. I'll tell you though, destroying the enemy core is far more exciting and satisfying than making the enemy team surrender, at least in my opinion. So how do you destroy the core? Well, the very uttermost basics of it are, first of all, you have to destroy the first two tiers of the enemy towers. Now, if you've played the game, you'll know that both sides of the map are mirrored. There is a lane to the left, a lane in the middle, and a lane on the right, and then there's a jungle all around. Each lane has, like I said, 2 layers of towers. And then after those 2 layers of towers is the inhibitor. You need to destroy each layer of tower, including the inhibitor, so that your minions and your team can advance forward towards the enemy core so that you complete the ultimate objective of destroying the enemy core. So how do you destroy towers? Well, it's pretty simple. Destroying towers is something that can start as early as the first encounter in the game, early on, mid-game, and late game. To destroy the towers, one of the main things you want to focus on is having your minions advancing in the area of the tower. The reason you want to do this is so that the tower, which has a defensive system, attacks the minions opposed to the heroes that are within the area of the tower. If you don't have any minions in there and you try to jump into the enemy tower all by yourself, it's going to attack you. In early game, it's going to do a lot of damage and potentially kill you really quickly. So you need to be very careful when you go in and out of the enemy towers. So, another quick little tip on towers and inhibitors. If you dive into the enemy tower or into the enemy inhibitor, even though you have minions in there, and you start attacking the enemy hero that's trying to defend it, the tower will lock onto you and prioritize killing you opposed to the minions. You can think of it as sort of an advanced threat system if you want. So you want to make sure that you're very careful if you're going to attack an enemy hero while you're under tower, especially in the early game where you don't have a lot of defense and you might not have all of your abilities up. Just a little thing to keep in mind. So destroying the first and second tiers of towers and then destroying the inhibitor, which is basically a third and final tower, are some of the main objectives. Now, there are a couple of differences between the towers and the inhibitor. Without getting into it too much, the one I'll point out is that even after destroying the enemy inhibitor, it can respawn after a certain amount of time. So keep that in mind as you play the game, that if you notice an inhibitor you've destroyed is back, that's a part of the game. However, when it comes back, it doesn't do damage. It basically prevents your team from getting super minions. Moving on. Once you have destroyed the inhibitor, the final inhibitor, on any of the lanes or all of the lanes, you are now free to enter the enemy's territory and destroy the core. Again, you want minions with you if you're going to go into that core because it will do lots of damage. But the more minions that are in there, or more heroes that are in there, the more that damage is spread out across all of the participants. Alright, that does it for our primary objectives. Let's move into the secondary objectives. This is probably the funnest part of the game here. It's building your hero, building your kit as quickly as possible. Every hero in the game has 18 levels that you can progress through. And on top of those 18 levels, you can unlock different levels of your own abilities. Every hero has a set amount of abilities and their basic attacks as well on top of that. So as you progress through the game and you level up, you get more abilities, and those abilities get lower cooldowns, or they get more damage, or they have different things that happen with them that make them more effective for you. So you want to make sure that you're leveling up very quickly. Another thing you want to do is to build your kit or build your cards. So in other words, building whatever style of game you want to play. If you're a caster, you want to be building magical damage and cooldowns. If you're playing support or you're tanky, you want to build tanky. If you're going to be a hitter like a carry, you want to be making sure you're doing attack damage or basic attack damage. You want to be doing attack speed. Without getting into that too much, building your card system is super essential. But you can't do that if you don't have gold. So what I want to do is take a quick look into how to get gold and how to level up as quick as possible in Predecessor. Number 1, last hit minions. This one is absolutely key. If you don't last hit the minions, so in other words, your attack is the one that kills the minion, you don't get nearly as much gold or experience from the kill. Now, this is a super simple one in Predecessor. They've actually made it quite easy, a little too easy, but it's not so bad. If you watch the minions while you're in game, you'll see that they have a yellow bar of health above their heads. But once they have taken enough damage from either you, fellow heroes, or from other minions that are on your side, their health will fall into a red bar. What you want to do is you want to be the last one to hit that minion when it falls into the red bar. That will give you the most experience and the most gold you can possibly get out of it. And if you can do that on every minion or nearly every minion that's in your lane, you will absolutely advance quickly. So being effective and practicing your last hits is key. Another really good way to build your kit and to attain gold is by killing enemy heroes. Of course, who doesn't want to do that, right? Getting kills is huge. You can advance your levels a lot quicker that way, and you can advance gold that way, especially if there's a bounty on that specific hero's head. However, we're not going to get into that one today. Moving on to number 3, destroying enemy towers and inhibitors. Again, this one gives you gold and this one gives you experience. You want to make sure that you are completing the objectives of your lane so that you can attain experience and gold real quick. And fourth and finally for this category is to complete the supporting objectives around the map. Now that brings us into our final category, which is referring to number 4 there, supporting objectives. Now there are multiple supporting objectives that you can complete in the game. For example, if you're in the duo lane and you look on your map and you see to the right, there's a little gold icon there. That is a buff. If you go and kill that buff before the enemy team does, you get a little advancement of gold. Likewise, on the other side of the map, if you're in the off lane, you'll see a little green one. That's the green buff. It also gives you a buff. And if you're in the mid lane, on both your left and right side is the river buffs. If you destroy those buffs, you get a varying different set of advancements, anywhere from movement speed to attack speed to ability damage. So you want to make sure that you are effectively and quickly destroying those objectives so that you can get ahead in the game. They don't necessarily give you much in the line of gold and experience, but what they do really do is give you a little bit of a leg up on your opposing hero. So now we're going to look at the really key, I would say, supporting objectives. Number 1, Fangtooth. Fangtooth is that big ugly raptor dude that hangs out on the duo side of the map. Fangtooth is an objective that you can destroy multiple times throughout the game. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it does have a fair amount of health. So typically, if you're going to engage in Fangtooth, you typically want at least 2 people attacking it, if not having 3 or even 4 attacking it, especially if the enemy team is also looking to attain Fangtooth at the same time, which happens often because it spawns on a clock. Now, there are a couple of buffs that come with Fangtooth, and there's a couple reasons you really do want to get it. First of all, jungle and river buffs will now give you 50% longer lifespan, and it caps at 60 seconds. So in other words, when you get those supporting objectives, like the river buffs, you get them for a lot longer. It also makes it so that enemy structures now take 15% more damage. You get 10% improved movement speed out of combat, 5% cooldown reduction, and 10% magical and physical power, physical armor, and magical armor. And this scales as you destroy raptors. I think it's up to 4 times. So destroying raptors is a big deal because you get huge buffs from it. So you want to make sure that as a team, you are focusing on raptors, or Fangtooth, as it's officially called. Now, there's a lot of tactics that get involved here, and there's a lot of things that come into play that make it easier to get, or defenses you should put up, but we're not going to get into that today. That might follow in a later video. The next supporting objective and final one that I want to focus on is Orb Prime. Orb Prime is that ugly kind of silver and purple guy that spawns in the map. Now there's 2 layers to this guy. There is the Mini Prime that spawns prior to the 20-minute mark. The Mini Prime gives a buff to a single hero on the team. And typically, Mini Prime has lower health and does lower damage. It can be soloed, so you can kill it by yourself depending on the hero you are, but I would argue that early mid-game you probably want somebody with you to try to destroy it so that you can destroy it quickly and lessen the chance of you dying to an objective in the map and being really embarrassed in front of your teammates. Now at the 20-minute mark, full Orb Prime will spawn. This is the much larger version. This one does far more damage. It does a much bigger AoE damage, and it has way more health. It's a lot harder to kill. However, the buff that comes with it is a buff that affects your entire team, provided that your teammates are alive. Now, the buff that comes in general is a physical and magical defense increase, and physical and magical attack increase, and it also gives you a real quick increase of mana and health. It also has a really interesting key feature, which is an AoE that follows all of the people or heroes who have Orb Prime defeated. What it does is it gives your buffs to your minions. You'll notice that when you have Orb Prime or your team has killed Orb Prime, you'll notice that your minions start to glow purple. That's because they have now taken a part of your buff. They can do more damage and they have far more defense. This is a big buff to your team, especially if you're trying to destroy enemy towers or destroy the enemy core or get ahead in kills. This is a big key to the game. But just remember, as a quick tip, when you're killing either Fangtooth or Orb Prime, you need to remember that the enemy team is also looking to do the same thing, typically speaking. So you need to set up defenses for your team, have your wards placed in key spots, and you need to be ready for a team fight at any moment. So make sure if you're going to engage either Fangtooth or Orb Prime, almost said the bad word there, if you're going to engage either Fangtooth or Orb Prime, be ready. Make sure your team knows what's going on. Communicate with your team, guys. If you watched my last video, I kind of got annoying with how much I stressed communication as key. If you go into Orb Prime all by yourself, or you and the one other person you're in a chat with go into Orb Prime, almost did it again, yourself, and your team doesn't show up, but the enemy team does, there's a good chance they're going to kill you and or Prime, or they're going to kill you and they're going to kill Fangtooth, and then they're going to get the buff and your team doesn't. So make sure you communicate with your team before you do these things. And that's going to do it. If you can follow these main objectives and you can carry them out as efficiently and effectively as you can, I guarantee you will be a better player. You'll grow in the game, you'll make the community better, and we'll have a lot more fun playing together when we're on a lot more even of a playing ground. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really hope that you guys are enjoying Pred. I'm having so much fun. It's such a blast. It feels like Paragon. It's the good old days to me. And I hope to see you guys out there. Peace.